What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here. Hump Day Wednesday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We are live in the Matt Black Kia studios. That's right, Matt Black Kia. They want to get you approved today. That's Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblackkia.com. Jam-packed show again today. We got Dave Weinberg for a Weinberg Wednesday joining us coming up at 6:15 p.m. Get his thoughts on the Eagles and the NFL draft. Of course, you can hear all the NFL draft coverage right here on 97.3 ESPN. Tomorrow night at 7 p.m. begins the coverage. Kevin McCormick live at the center tonight for Sixers versus Hawks. He'll join us again coming up at 6:40 p.m. Hey, they got the win against OKC. Thunder then go ahead and beat the Celtics. How ironic is that? Then you got to turn around and play, oh, that's right, the Hawks. And the Hawks are this sneaky good team in the Eastern Conference. They fire former Sixers coach Lloyd Pierce. Then they bring in the banished Nate McMillan, who actually had some success with the Pacers. And then they have success. They're playing pretty good. Interesting team. Fun team. Should be a good game tonight. 7 o'clock right here on 97.3 ESPN. So we got a lot to get to, a lot to touch on throughout the show. Of course, I want to hit on as well, top of the show here. Big trade happened earlier today. You had Teddy Bridgewater traded by the Panthers to the Broncos for a 6th-round pick. A couple of points I want to make with that. First of all, remember that the current GM of the Broncos is not the same person who drafted Drew Lock. John Elway vacated his general manager responsibilities earlier this year. He is now just kind of like, he's kind of like a token figure at the top of the football operations at this point for the Broncos. So the current GM, George Patton, did not draft. He did not draft Drew Lock. George Patton was in the Vikings organization when they drafted Teddy Bridgewater. So this deal makes a lot of sense for both teams. The Panthers are telling you they're fully committed to Sam Darnold moving forward. The Broncos, they're going to have a quarterback competition. It's going to be interesting to see exactly how all of that goes. Now, how does this impact the rest of the NFL draft and the Eagles? Couple fronts. Number one, it guarantees that picks 4 through 9 are all on the market. Picks 4 through 9 are all being shopped now in the NFL draft. I can promise you that. I can guarantee you that. Now, all of those picks are now going to be readily available for people. So whether you're the Patriots, whether you're Washington football team, whether you're the Chicago Bears, whoever you may be, if you have a question at quarterback long term, you can go pick from 4 to 9 to get a quarterback, because we know for sure 3 quarterbacks are going in the top 3, which leaves 2 more to be had. And I can't promise you who is or isn't going to be picked where. I can promise you that all 5 of those quarterbacks are being picked at minimum in the top 15. I'm going to assume overall it's going to be the top 10, because in this league, everyone trades up for quarterbacks, which means that if you're the Eagles and you don't need a quarterback per se, you better keep an eye on that draft board. You know, Howie Rose, who played the clip yesterday, said that they are making calls right now about different trade scenarios, different draft scenarios. Well, you better keep a close eye on that draft board, because the only thing I can promise you is Kyle Pitts and Jamar Chase are being drafted in the top 10. 3 quarterbacks are being drafted in the top 10 at minimum, and at least 1 more will be. So that accounts for 6 players, 6 out of 10 picks. The rest of the picks, I'm not sure. We're assuming Penei Sewell gets drafted in the top 10. We're assuming that either Devonta Smith or Jalen Waddle get picked in the top 10. We're assuming a lot of things right now. But this trade of Teddy Bridgewater clearly defines that picks 4 through 9 are on the market. a good thing for the Eagles because they can let the draft play out. But it might be a bad thing if they were hoping a certain player falls to them and teams get a little crazy. Because if you're the Broncos, in my opinion, you got to go either offensive line, like a Rashawn Slater, or Micah Parsons at 9. If you're the Panthers, you better go offensive line if you're serious about Sam Darnold. If you're the Lions, you need a lot of things. You need a wide receiver. You need an offensive line. You need a lot there. We know the Dolphins traded the 6 because they wanted a certain caliber of player. There's a lot of talk they want either Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts. And if both of those guys, for some reason, are off the board before they pick, they might even look about trading out. Falcons, we don't know what they're going to do. I'm assuming that you look at picks 4 and 5. If you're a team that's willing to sacrifice it all, you're trading up that far. And as far as the Eagles are concerned, they better be careful because if this draft turns sideways, then you're going to have some problems. You're going to have some problems because you need to get top tier talent in this draft. And if you walk out of this draft without a J.C. Horn or a Patrick Surtain in the first round, and you have to, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but settle for a guy like Kwity Paye or Rashawn Slater or someone like that, you got some problems. Because, yes, there is depth in this draft. You can get still a good wide receiver and cornerback in the second round, but you had a defense that has a lot of holes. You have a roster depth that has a lot of holes. You have a lot of needs. One player is not going to change your draft, but one player can at least make it easier for you moving forward. So that's why when I look at the Eagles and this trade with Teddy Bridgewater, I'm a little wary of what could happen. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We'll be joined by Dave Weinberg coming up in just a few minutes for Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, the Sixers are back in action today. We'll talk with Kevin McCormick about that in a little bit. Paul Hudrick brought up an interesting point. I'm going to touch on about the Sixers. We didn't get to talk about this on the 5 questions. About Mike Scott and the rotations. I thought this quote was very interesting from Paul Hudrick earlier on Inside the Sixers. Take a listen.
I don't think Mike Scott's going to have minutes in the playoffs. So he's not taking anyone's minutes. I think more likely you're going to see more guards. Like you're going to see, I think Doc would rather kind of play it out and mix up his lineups to where Shake Milton, George Hill, Matisse Thybulle, and Furkan Korkmaz are all on, and then of course Dwight Howard are all higher on the totem pole than Mike Scott right now.
If that's the case, then the Sixers better hope they don't play the team like the Bucks, because the Bucks are long and they're athletic. I think you can get away with those kind of rotations against teams like the Celtics, even against the Nets, for example. You can get away with that against teams that don't have a lot of athleticism and a lot of big men who can play in the inside-outside game. But, man, if you are moving forward without Mike Scott in the playoffs, I'm not saying he's a big deal maker, but I'm just curious. I'm curious to see what the Sixers do, because playing that many guards, you're sacrificing some rebounding. And what you're doing is you're asking more of Embiid, Simmons, Harris, and Howard. You're asking them to do more than maybe they're used to. We'll talk more with Kevin McCormick about that coming up at 6:40 tonight. But coming up next, Dave Weinberg joins us for a Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget our draft coverage here on 97.3 ESPN. It's being brought to you by GMS Law. That's right, GMS Law. Make the right call with 4 convenient locations to serve you. Visit them online at gmslaw.com. Weinberg Wednesday next here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM. Don't forget 97.3 ESPN mobile app is powered by First Bank of Seattle City. It's free for you to download. Get all the updates and news you need on the Phillies, Sixers, Philly, Eagles, Flyers, South Jersey high school sports. We got it all covered, not just at 97.3 ESPN.com, but the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Customize your alerts right now on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app so you never miss out on any of the great coverage we have on the app and the website.
It's the 2021 NFL Draft exclusively on 97.3 ESPN. Who will the Eagles take with the 12th pick? Tune in to 97.3 ESPN to find out. Round 1 coverage begins tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Tune in for every selection and every draft day trade. It's the 2021 NFL Draft, and it's only on South Jersey's exclusive radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. 97.3 ESPN.
Swing in to Matt Blatt Kia and put zero down. A hit with 0% APR financing. That's deep for 75 months. A home run. Don't get fooled by a bad pitch. Matt Blatt Kia in Toms River and Egg Harbor Township needs your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. So get out of that old car you hate and get the credit you deserve with zero down payment and 0% APR financing available for up to 75 months on every new 2021 Kia Sportage in stock, or get a $2,500 consumer rebate only at Matt Blatt Kia. We want to get you approved today, and you can't make a mistake with our 4-day love it or leave it return policy. Come in today or visit us online because
It's gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
offers with approved Tier 1 or 2 credit through PM Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on $13.33 per 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity refinance into new loan. Go to mattblattkianj.com for complete details. Expires 5/5/2021. Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and now on Route 37 in Toms River.
At Simple Mobile, you get the no contract advantage. Unlimited talk and text plus 5 gigabytes of high-speed data for $30 a month. $30 a month on a nationwide 5G network and no contract. That's our best deal ever. Shop now at simplemobile.com. Simple Mobile, out with the old, in with the simple. Compatible 5G capable device and SIM required. Actual availability, coverage, and speed may vary. 5G network not available in all areas. 5G upload speeds not yet available. Plus taxes and fees. 1 month equals 30 days. Terms at simplemobile.com.
Time is running out for the Jeep Celebration event at Kendall, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram. If you love Jeep, join the celebration with 0% APR for 84 months with Chrysler Capital Financing on selected Jeep Cherokee, Compass, and Renegade models. And check out the amazing lease deals on Jeep Wrangler, Compass, Grand Cherokee, Renegade, and Gladiator. Need a truck for work or play? It's Ram Truck Month at Kendall. Get the Ram 1500, the most awarded light-duty truck in America, with 0% APR for 72 months. plus $1,000 bonus cash, plus $500 Chrysler Capital bonus cash when you finance through Chrysler Capital at Kindle. Ram Truck Month and the Jeep Celebration event are almost over, but don't worry. Kindle still has the largest selection of Jeeps and Rams on their huge 100-acre lot just off exit 10 of the Parkway on Stone Harbor Boulevard. The only place to get your Jeep or Ram. Kindle, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram. 609-465-5000 or shop from home at KindleDodge.net. See Kindle for details.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig back here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget, the Talk Sixers coming up at 6:40 tonight with Kevin McCormick live from the Center for Sixers versus Hawks. But right now, joining us on the Boardwalk kind of hotline, as is every weekday on Wednesdays. It's a Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. And that means Dave Weinberg joins the show via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. First beach day of 2021 is in the books.
It was definitely warm enough for it. I noticed that, that's for sure. Even though apparently it's much colder in this building than it has been outside for the last week. But I digress for whatever reason. So,
they pumped up the AC, I guess, huh?
They pumped something up. I don't know what it is. I think it's the AC, but either way, I came prepared at least. So,
very good.
Dave, tomorrow NFL draft. We're finally getting to the draft. We're finally done. Well, at least we're almost. We got 24 hours left with all the shenanigans and all the smoke screens and everything. What is the one thing you are looking forward to most about the draft finally being here?
That it's almost over. I've never seen an event that draws so much hype for something that, quite frankly, I don't get the overwhelming interest in it. I mean, people actually have draft day parties, and it's just they're picking players whether you like it or not, or whether you're celebrating or not. I don't get. But it's morphed into this national phenomenon, and they credit the NFL for figuring out a way how to make something that's so boring something exciting to at least the fans, I guess. But I'll be grateful when it's over, to be quite honest with you.
Well, you still got to get through it. So the Eagles are currently sitting at 12th overall. I think that the trade today, I said earlier, was very interesting. Mm-hmm. Teddy Bridgewater to the Broncos, because to me, that opened up the possibility that picks 4 through 9 are all open. They're all open for trades, basically. They're all open season for somebody to consider moving up or moving down or doing something. So if I'm the Eagles, I got to be watching that draft board very closely, because I want to see how this board plays out. Because if I have a chance, if I have to trade up and go get somebody, you might have to, because it's now all hands on deck when it comes to 4 through 9 to me.
Yeah, because it looks like the Dolphins and the Broncos, neither of them are going to take a quarterback, which means that there's going to be a position player dropping. And so, yeah, if the Eagles have their eyes set on Patrick Surtain or Jalen Waddle or somebody of that ilk, then and they think that they have to go up and get them, then they're going to have to do that, which makes it kind of interesting that they had their options open. It's number 6 and decided to trade that away. And now the interesting scenario is they could find themselves back in the top 10 again.
What do you think the Eagles' priorities are? You've covered this team for a long time, Dave. So you understand this team does not think like the rest of the league. So how do you think their prioritization is going? There's a lot of people who are wondering, does the team just throw their hands up in the air and say, you know what, we're going to go safe. We're just going to go an offensive lineman. I mean, that's always a possibility.
Yeah, it is. And you can never go wrong there, I guess. I mean, they do have some issues up there with Brandon Brooks coming off some injuries. Lane Johnson, same thing. Jason Kelsey's not getting any younger. So, they could do worse than taking an offensive lineman. And personally, though, as we've mentioned, you and I have talked about, ad nauseum, it seems like I really think that secondary is where they need to go. I was starting to maybe gravitate a little bit towards wide receiver, but the more I'm thinking about it, the more they need Patrick Surtain or J.C. Horn, somebody like that to solidify that cornerback spot opposite Darius Slay. I think that's the main priority.
Yeah, and the thing with the wide receiver is, to me, Dave, I look at this draft, I feel like you can find wide receivers later in the draft. It's not like this is a draft where it's top heavy. And to me, I look at last year's draft, the top 3 receivers weren't the most productive last year. Jefferson, T. Higgins, they were not the top 3 receivers. So I think that this might be a trend going on in the NFL. We're seeing more and more that the guy who's not picked first, second, or third is always the best receiver from that draft class.
That could be, although I don't think this year's draft class is quite that deep as far as like star potential. I think there are some good wide receivers, like you said, you could get like in the second and third round. And I think there's a real drop off after Jamar Chase. I think he's far and away the best wide receiver, at least potentially in this class. Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle are both talented, each kind of, I don't want to say limited, but I don't know if they have the overall package that Jamar Chase presents. So, but you couldn't go wrong with either one of those guys either, I guess.
Yeah, I've heard people say that they don't know if Devonta Smith can be a pure X receiver, a guy who creates separation consistently. And to me, there's one guy in this draft who's not named Jamar Chase who gained separation consistently because he was going against double and triple teams. And I'd love to see him in the Eagles uniform. That's Rashawn Bateman from Minnesota. I feel like that's a guy, you want a guy who gets the ball. That's a guy who gets the ball. I feel like that's what this offense is missing because outside of those two games that Travis Fulgham was out there, they didn't really have a guy that really attacked the ball when it was thrown to him.
That's true. Although they drafted J.J. Arcega-Whiteside to do that, to play that role, and hasn't worked out so good. And he was a second round pick, by the way. So, maybe they can get it right this time. Maybe they can go get a guy that can go get the ball in the second or third round and really help themselves.
Dave Weinberg joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Extra Point Comms over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Dave, sticking also with the drafts, I'm curious what you think about, all this hoopla about the quarterbacks every single year. It feels like, people talk so much of quarterback, but people forget that in the last 10 years, and I couldn't believe this stat when it first came out. I had to go double check it. There's only been one first-round quarterback who started in the Super Bowl in the last 10 years. That's Pat Mahomes. So, what are we doing drafting all these quarterbacks so high then? It's like if the quarterback position is supposed to be so coveted, but yet only one guy got to the Super Bowl as a starter outside of Mahomes and Goff. All right, well, what do we do then? What do we do with the quarterback position?
Well, yeah, I understand that. Yeah, it's true. But it seems like the teams that are drafting quarterbacks really high are the teams that sucked the year before. And they're probably 2, 3, 4 years away from turning their franchise around. So I think they take quarterbacks like Joe Burrow, for example. I think they're taking him with the idea that they can build around him and maybe make a Super Bowl run in 2023, 2024, or something like that. They need more parts. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's there is the theory, though, you want your franchise quarterback to be able to step in and carry that team on his shoulders right away. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen too often.
Dave, one of the arguments we've been having lately is about the concept of drafting best player available versus need. Where do you stand on that concept?
I'm of the opinion, though, that I think you have to address your need. Like you say with the Eagles, for example, they have needs at almost up and down the board, across the line and secondary, everything. But so I think you draft the best player at that. But say you're targeting corner, then draft the best corner, or wide receiver, draft the best wide receiver. But you don't. I think it's kind of a reach if you see like an edge rusher who you view as better than the bbest corner or wide receiver. I think that's a mistake. I think that's when you reach and you get yourself in trouble. I think it's great to have like the best guy, but I think you should just focus on the position that you need the most and focus on the best guy at that position.
Dave Weinberg joining us for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, aside from being a longtime Eagles writer and reporter, you also have a passion for baseball. And I want to open the door for you right here. You tweeted about Madison Bumgarner the other day, so go for it.
That's a no-hitter, plain and simple. He didn't make the rules. Major League Baseball established doubleheaders as 7-inning games, which means they're official games. They didn't get shortened for rain. They didn't get shortened for snow, what have you. It's a 7-inning game, and he fulfilled his obligation by pitching all 7 innings and not allowing a hit. So, in my view, that's a no-hitter.
Why do you think baseball is just so ridiculous when it comes to this stuff? I just don't understand. Like you made the rule. Right. Now you're saying, no, it doesn't count. Like, it's almost like baseball is trying to be like, well, no, we don't want to corrupt their rule book. And it's like, if you cared about the rule book so much, you would have done a lot of things over the last 30 years.
Yeah, like you're counting it as a shutout. but you're not counting it as a no-hitter. What's the
Right,
freaking difference?
What's the difference?
Yeah, I don't understand a lot of things they do. It just seems like they're making up stuff as they go along sometimes, and I'm always amazed and befuddled by some of the stuff that they come up with at the last minute. It seems like.
I mean, if they cared so much about the 7-inning no hitter, they should have just made it back to 9 innings. I mean, I thought the 7-inning thing was for last year anyway. I mean, I feel
I'm
like,
with you.
I feel like baseball is baseball because they have a certain set of rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
A certain set of, the mound is this distance, home plate to first base is this distance. You wear this uniform on the road, you wear that uniform at home. Like baseball has all these very specific things.
Manager has to dress like a player for some reason.
Which has given us some very indelible images of the managers over the years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like you have all these things, but yet all of a sudden it's, oh, by the way, we're gonna have 7-inning doubleheaders and a guy starting second base to start the 10th inning. Like I just don't understand. Like why are they so obsessed with changing the things that make baseball baseball?
Yeah, I guess it's all about shortening the games, but what's the difference between 7 inning and 9 innings? 20 minutes, maybe. I mean, that makes no sense to me. The starting the guy on second, it just smacks of beer league softball to me. It's just a gimmick that really makes no sense. I mean, are they late for happy hour or something? I don't get the purpose of that at all.
The only rule change that's been proposed, which they didn't impose because baseball is baseball, that I would have been okay with is a pitch clock.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Saying, maybe like, I don't know how many seconds you want to make it. I don't really care. But to me, there should be some sort of thing, put it right behind over the catcher's shoulder. So we can just be like, pitcher looks in, the catcher looks at the clock, looks in the pitcher, look at the clock. To me, if you want to do anything but the speed of the game, that's what you do. You don't sit there and be like, 7-inning doubleheaders.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever had the chance to see it, but the Bridgeton Invitational Tournament, which at one time was one of the biggest so-called amateur tournaments in the country. I mean, you had guys coming in from all over the East Coast to play for teams, and they're the ones who pretty much established ways to shorten game, as is pitch clock, as in so many warm-up tosses, so many the batter only has so much time to get back into the box. They did a great job with some of their innovations, and Major League Baseball would do well to maybe formulate that. Like the pitch clock is a great idea, and I really don't need to see Bryce Harper readjust his batting gloves after every pitch. Did they get loose when you took ball 2? Really? Can you just stand back in the box, stop tapping the plate 17 times, and just get ready to hit?
It reminds me of Nomar Garcia Para with his exorbitant routine.
I mean, I understand people have their idiosyncrasies. I do too. But I mean, enough's enough already.
Yeah, I feel like baseball just is missing the point. And at the end of the day, we have a league where the best players in the game right now are on the West Coast, and that's nobody's fault. Okay, Trout's with the Angels, Mookie Betts is with the Dodgers, Fernando Tatis Jr. is with the Padres.
Yep.
But you know what? You got to promote those guys, Dave. You're so worried. You're so worried about the game and the health of the game. There's things you can do. Like when I was a kid, which wasn't exactly that long ago, but still, I'm 36 years old. When I used to go to the game, there'd be billboards. What was on the billboards? It was of the players, right? When you see a commercial for the Phillies, it was of the players. Now I see a commercial or a billboard or whatever, it's of the fans at the games. Yeah. And it's like baseball totally forgot to promote their players. And I feel like if they care so much about the health of the game, there are things you can do that are not taking a no-hitter away from Madison Bumgarner.
That's true. Yeah, they need to definitely reevaluate some of the things that they do. Yeah, you're right. They don't market their players nearly enough. And you're right. Most of the best guys are on the West Coast, but that's just the way the breaks of the game are. Not everybody can play for the Yankees or the Red Sox or the Phillies or the Mets or the Nationals or what have you. Every team's gonna have their stars, and you would do well to find a way to make those guys more popular throughout the country, not just in California or Arizona or where have you.
Dave Weinberg joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, I want to flip over to a boxing question for you. You've covered boxing for a long time. What is your take on the Paul brothers and they're using basically the boxing world as a platform to promote themselves. What is your take on them and their? To me, I call it a fiasco.
You call it what? I'm sorry.
I call it a fiasco.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I understand that because boxing's such an individual sport, it's left to the boxers a lot of times to promote themselves and to create a certain image or a certain brand, what have you. But the bottom line is, it is a sport. And I think that should fall on the promoters and the networks to take care of that kind of stuff and let the fighters fight. Well, speaking of boxing, real quick, Millville's Thomas Lamana is fighting for the world title on Saturday night on Fox against Arislande Lara out in California. So it'll be people want to tune in. It's on free TV, so make sure you turn in to see if Cornflake can become a world champion.
Now you said that regular Fox or FS1?
Yep, regular Fox.
Okay, we always got to delineate that for the folks out there.
Yep, I gotcha.
Yeah,
it's not paper. There is a pay-per-view fight, but it's not that one, so you're good.
Okay, well, yeah, well, save people a little unnecessary money because half the time, no offense to boxing, but the way it's turned into now, you pay for the pay-per-view and you're sitting around for half your life wanting to watch a fight because they have so many things they got to fill the time with when it comes to verticals and stuff.
And quite honestly, there aren't that many fighters there that are pay-per-view worthy fighters. I mean, aside from Canelo Alvarez, I can't think of another one really. Maybe Tyson Fury, but it's time for the networks have done a pretty good job. Showtime, ESPN, Fox, they've done a pretty good job of putting some good fighters on there. But the promoters have to realize not everything's worth $49.95 or $79.95 to watch. Like Andre Broner, for example, what's he doing on pay-per-view? I mean, I wouldn't pay 2 cents to see him.
I don't think anybody in the right mind is giving 2 cents to see him, but what do I know? You mentioned Tyson Fury. Is he going to fight Anthony Joshua or what?
I'm starting to wonder. That seems to make the most sense, but as you know, in boxing, things rarely make sense in that kind of in that sport. I would guess eventually, maybe not this year, but maybe next year. Assuming everybody can work out their differences and arrange the right promoter, the right pay, what have you, which always seems to be stumbling blocks in these kind of things. But I think the public wants it so much that I think that it'll happen eventually. When, I don't know though.
Hopefully happens eventually. I mean, I know Lomachenko is coming back. He's fighting a guy that I'd never heard of in my life. And by the time I figured out what the guy's name was, I kind of gave up on trying to look it up. So,
Well, Lomachenko will probably win in the time it takes you to look it up.
Right. Exactly. It's just, I mean, listen, I'm not the boxing diehard you are, Dave, but like to me, like there are fighters I think that are worth watching and I want to see them fight. And to me, I feel like that's how the regular fan feels. They want to see the fighters they want to see fight. And when they're not fighting, there's a part of you that's like, what the heck?
Right. I mean, I understand they can't fight. Well, they could, but they really won't. They won't fight a world title caliber challenger every time out. But you can only fight so many so-called tune-up fights before people start to forget about you. So, I mean, that's the case with Arislande Lara. I mean, people are viewing Thomas Lamana, rightly or wrongly, as kind of like a tune-up. I'm not so sure how many people are going to watch it, but this is like the third fight in a row for him where he hasn't fought anybody that's that has that big name. So I mean, Thomas has in our area, but countrywide, worldwide, not so much. So they have to be willing to step up at least 2 out of 3 fights and fight, truly be challenged, truly be tested, and a fight that's actually like a 50-50% outcome as opposed to a so-called tune-up.
He's Dave Weinberg. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. Check out all of his extra point columns at 973ESPN.com. And of course, don't forget Tequila and Touchdowns with Dave Weinberg, the podcast. Always a fun listen. And as all guests, he appeared each Wednesday as he does on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. Dave, appreciate the conversation. We'll catch you next week.
Well, thanks a lot, Josh. I appreciate it. Talk to you next week.
And of course, our conversation with Dave Weinberg, as we talked about the NFL draft, all NFL draft coverage on 97.3 ESPN, being brought to you by GMS Law. Make the right call with 4 convenient locations to serve you. Visit them online at gmslaw.com. We'll head up to the center. Coming up next, Kevin McCormick joins us live from the center for Sixers versus Hawks talk right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
It's Sixers basketball tonight on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
Huge jam, a two-hand stump by Simmons, knocks him out of the way and dunks the ball with two hands.
The Sixers host the Atlanta Hawks tonight. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN.
Zero down payment, 0% financing, and $2,500 off MSRP on every 2021 Nissan Murano in stock.
Oh, yeah, it's on at Matt Blatt Nissan.
The word is out. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan and the all-new 2021 Nissan Rogue. Lease a loaded SV model, just $269 per month with 0 security deposit. Plus, Matt Blatt Nissan needs your trade. Even if you owe more than it's worth, pay 0 down, pay 0% financing, and take $2,500 off MSRP on every new Nissan Murano in stock, plus our fast-track checkout. So bring any trade to Matt Blatt Nissan in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot or online at mattblattnissan.com.
Negative equity will be refinanced into new vehicle. Rate qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. 0% APR financing based on 1667 per thousand borrowed. Offers can't be combined. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblattnissan.com for complete details. Offer ends 5/4/21.
It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, our Sixers coverage here on 97.3 ESPN being brought by Trifecta Therapeutics in Glassboro, South Jersey's premier sports rehabilitation and physical therapy center, treating the pros and the Joes. Visit them online at trifectatherapeutics.com. We're going to head up to the center right now. Sixers versus Hawks comes to you right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. In about roughly 20 minutes from now. Tom McGinnis on the call right here on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin McCormick, our Sixers writer over at 97.3 ESPN.com, joins us live from up at the center as the Sixers take on a very interesting Hawks team. Kevin, how's it going up there?
Hey, Josh, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good, and I think this is the game that I think kind of fits more of what we want to see from the Sixers, which is, all right, guys are back, right? They're back in the lineup. They're back playing for the most part, and you're playing a team that you could potentially see in the postseason. This Hawks team is a fun team to watch right now.
I agree. The Hawks have definitely turned things around after moving on from Lloyd Pierce and adding Nate McMillan to the head coaching staff. But this is actually going to be a little bit of a depleted Hawks staff tonight. There's no Trae Young, Bogdan Bogdanovic, or Kevin Huerter. So for the first time in about a week and a half, the Sixers are actually the healthy team going into a matchup. But I completely agree. It's always good to get some extra tape and some extra time on the floor against a team that you could potentially see in the postseason, as we are just 10 games left in the regular season.
Hey, listen, don't sell out Lou Williams. He's going to go out there and ball for his chicken wings, okay?
Yeah, definitely. They still have more than enough firepower. This is definitely not a matchup they should overlook. Like you said, they still have Lou Williams. They still have Danilo Gallinari, Clint Capella, John Collins in the front court. So still a lot of firepower from this Hawks team. Definitely not, a matchup you can overlook just because Trae Young's out.
Sixers trying to still get a rehold of that number one seed. It's important for them. They want to avoid maybe the Bucks or the Nets in the second round. Kevin, when you look at the Sixers as well going into this game, it's an opportunity for these guys to get back to playing together. We know how almost unstoppable they are when Simmons, Embiid, and Harris are on the court together.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing it does is it allows proper rotations to be done. It's actually something Doc has talked about recently, that is arguably the biggest takeaway of having to play shorthanded, is that this late in the year you're stuck using these kind of plug-and-play lineups because different guys are in and out on a nightly basis. But we've already seen all season that the starting lineup has worked well pretty much from the jump. So the biggest takeaway is that now being at full health, it allows the second unit to have that cohesiveness, which they need with new additions like George Hill, like Anthony Tolliver, who still need to get integrated. So in this upcoming stretch, the biggest benefit of them being fully healthy is now it allows guys to slot into their proper roles of how things are most likely going to shape up once the postseason begins.
Kevin McCormick joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Follow on Twitter at KevinMCCNBA for all your Sixers and NBA coverage. He's at the center site for Sixers versus Hawks. Tom McGinnis on the call at the top of the hour right here on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin, I want to play an audio cut for you. Earlier today, Paul Hudrick was on with Mike Gill, and he said something very interesting about the potential rotations for the Sixers in the postseason. I want to get your reaction to this. This was Paul Hudrick earlier today on Inside the Sixers about Mike Scott not potentially at all being in the rotation.
I don't think Mike Scott's going to have minutes in the playoffs. So he's not taking anyone's minutes. I think more likely you're going to see more guards. Like you're going to see, like, I think Doc would rather kind of play it out and like mix up his lineups to where Shake Milton, George Hill, Matisse Thybulle, and Furkan Korkmaz are all on, and then of course Dwight Howard are all higher on the totem pole than Mike Scott right now.
What do you think about that? Because I mean, the idea of a no Mike Scott in the playoffs is an interesting concept.
I completely agree with Paul, just because arguably, well, if you look at the power forward minutes when the playoffs rolls around, Tobias Harris is most likely going to play north of 36 minutes. And then in those leftover minutes, you're likely going to see Ben Simmons slide into that position. So it allows them to kind of use the versatility of Ben Simmons and his ability to plug him in at multiple positions. And to just be blunt, Mike Scott has not played well this season. His three ball has come and gone. So if they do bring a power forward off the bench in the playoffs, it would have to be Anthony Tolliver in my eyes. Although he hasn't been around much, I think his veteran savvy and his IQ is more beneficial than to what Mike Scott could bring. And when you have vital guys like Matisse Thybulle and Shake Milton and George Hill, who you want to get, on the floor for a good amount of stretches in the postseason, obviously one guy has to fall out. And if I'm looking at this rotation and there's someone to take that cut, it has to be Mike Scott.
Is there a team in the Eastern Conference that you think would be a poor matchup then if the Sixers don't have a legitimate backup at the 4?
Not really, just because of the size that Ben Simmons has at that backup power forward spot. And at the end of the day, if you really needed that added size, you have it on the bench. It's just in terms of what works best and the players you're trying to roll out there. You could live without Mike Scott. And even you could have Matisse Thybulle defend up at times, but the defender that he is, although he typically guards 2s and 3s, he still has nice size and strength to him. So you could see him, defend up. We saw him earlier in this season when they played Detroit, how well he did on Blake Griffin, frustrating him and defending him. So there really isn't much that you're giving up, leaving Mike Scott out of this playoff rotation.
Hey, listen, maybe tonight's an opportunity for experimentation. I believe John Collins is playing tonight. Maybe you see how it works against the Hawks tonight. You take Tobias and Ben Simmons out, right?
Yeah, it's going to be tough in the battle of the front court with Capella and Collins. This is one of the rare teams that actually kind of have the front court size to combat the Sixers' larger lineup. So I agree. That definitely is one battle to keep an eye on. And it will be, maybe a deciding factor of how the Sixers plan to play teams with bigger front courts, like Milwaukee in a sense. So it could be kind of a trial run if you see a team like that.
Kevin McCormick joining us here on Game Night at Kevin MCC NBA on Twitter. Sixers versus Hawks coming up about 11 minutes from now here on 97.3 ESPN. I know Doc has talked about the desire to get George Hill as much run as possible before the start of the postseason. How do you think are we going to continue to see George in this role where he's kind of being mixed and matched? Or do you think before the playoffs, we're going to get an idea of what Doc's biggest comfort zone is with George?
It feels like Doc Rivers seems set on having George Hill be the backup point guard and run that second unit. Before the game today, he talked a little bit about he wants to use him a lot with Shake Milton because he feels that having George Hill on the floor with Shake Milton can kind of take some pressure off Milton. And arguably, I think that's the biggest benefit of why you brought in a guy like George Hill. He's a veteran point guard. He knows how to run a system. Not only does he take ball handling pressure off Shake Milton, but he also takes playmaking pressure off him as well, and allows Shake to play a little more free and embrace that kind of combo guard nature that is his game. So I think we could see him potentially maybe work with some closing lineups at a time, but it feels like Doc Rivers is keen on George Hill being the guy that's going to be kind of the maestro of that second unit.
How much also is George Hill being the maestro, as you call it, that second unit, have to do with the fact that when you think about the Sixers, Kevin, do you really think that maybe there's a possibility that George Hill is also going to be out there because you're going to potentially play a lot of teams with some maybe guard-heavy lineups? Teams like Boston, teams like Milwaukee and others, they can put out there multiple guards, sometimes even 3 guards at a time in a lineup.
Although he'll spend most of his time with the bench unit, I think there's a very real reality that George Hill does spend time with the starting lineup just because of situations like you said. With what he brings on defense, he adds another longer guard that can defend 1s and 2s. And then from an offensive perspective as well, being in that half court when the game slows down, he could be a nice partner in the 2-man game with Ben Simmons as well. So although a lot of people talked about bringing in Kyle Lowry to kind of up this lineup on both ends of the floor. George Hill does that, not to the magnitude of that Kyle Lowry does, but he brings a lot of what Lowry would have brought as well, and can still slide into that super sub role where he can be kind of a guy for the second unit, and then he can also be a nice supporting player running with the starters if needed.
Kevin, before I let you go, what is the biggest thing you're looking for tonight?
Just continued rhythm. I mean, they did great on Monday. It was a great showing on both ends. So just building on what you have going and trying to really ride a strong wave heading into the postseason. The Sixers have a very easy schedule to close out the regular season. This Atlanta Hawks team is actually the toughest team they're going to face record-wise. So everything is set for them to really just take off the runway in these final 10 games and have all the momentum that they need to start off a hopefully long postseason run.
At Kevin MCC NBA on Twitter. Check out his work over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Pre and post game coverage all Sixers season long. He is live at the center tonight for Sixers versus Hawks tonight on 97.3 ESPN FM. And as all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk Hotline. Kevin, great stuff. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll catch up with you after the NFL draft.
Thanks, Josh. Have a good night.
And, of course, our Sixers coverage here on 97.3 ESPN being brought to you by Trifecta Therapeutics in Glassboro, South Jersey's premier sports rehabilitation and physical therapy center, treating the pros and the Joes. Visit them online at trifectatherapeutics.com. That's right. We have the NFL draft the next 3 days. So tomorrow night, ESPN radio coverage begins at 7 p.m. On Thursday night, Friday night, the coverage begins at 6 p.m., Saturday at 12 p.m. So we got wall-to-wall NFL draft coverage right here on 97.3 ESPN. So you get a little reprieve from Sixers and Flyers for a few days, at least until Saturday night when the Flyers take on the Devils. And then we'll be back to our staggered Sixers-Flyers coverage for the rest of the Flyers season. And then the NBA playoffs are right around the corner, only a couple weeks away. We'll have the NBA playoffs and Sixers basketball right here on 97.3 ESPN. I want to remind everybody out there, starting tomorrow night, we're going to have a very special thing. So if you're watching us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, tomorrow night I will be anchoring our first round live stream coverage on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Just follow 97.3 ESPN. We are going to be live for the entire first round of the NFL draft. We're going to have some fun people to join the show with me, as I'm just going to be watching the draft. We're going to listen in on the picks, and we're going to tell you who was picked. So we're going to have a stream up the entire time of the first round. You'll hear the picks when they happen. We'll let you know what's going on, and we'll give you instant analysis. We're going to have Andy McNamara from Sportsnet, their NFL analyst, join me for the first 10 picks of the draft. And then Mike Gill will be joining me for immediate reaction for whoever the Eagles pick in the middle part of the first round. And then for picks 22 to 28, we'll be joined by the football scientist, NFL insider Casey Joyner. You hear him throughout the year on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. So we got a bunch of people coming in, and I have a surprise here or two who may or may not pop in at some point. But I can at least promise you those three people will be joining us on the live stream again Thursday night, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and we'll have the links posted over at 973ESPN.com. That's Thursday. Coverage begins at 8 o'clock. So if you want a more 97.3 ESPN perspective, you want the sports geek, myself, Josh Hennig, you want some of the people you've heard here on 97.3 ESPN, like Andy McNamara from Casey Joyner commenting on the draft, you can get it in real time right here on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And of course, our NFL draft coverage on 97.3 ESPN being brought to you by GMS Law. Make the right call. With 4 convenient locations to serve you, visit them online at gmslaw.com. Thanks, Dave Weinberg, for joining us for a Weinberg Wednesday a little bit earlier in the show. Also, thanks to Kevin McCormick for joining us live from the center. Sixers versus Hawks coming up next right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. I'll be back on the air tomorrow. Ian Fitzsimmons will join us tomorrow night on Game Night to give you a little more depth on the players who will be in the NFL draft and who will be selected in the first round. Of course, Ian Fitzsimmons will be part of ESPN Radio's coverage of the NFL draft. They'll join us tomorrow on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig. Have a great night. Hopefully, the Sixers beat the Hawks tonight.
It's your chance to win Sports Bash Cash up to $10,000. Enter the code words every day at 973ESPN.com or with the free mobile app. The more codes you enter, the more chances you have to win up to $10,000. Here's the Sports Bash Cash code word.
SOAP, SOAP. SOAP. Enter it now on our website, 973ESPN.com, or use the free mobile app. Sports Bash Cash is brought to you by Jersey Shore Federal Credit Union for all your lending needs. Get the next Sports Bash Cash code word tomorrow morning at 9:55.
It's Sports Bash Cash 10 times a day. Every weekday at 55 after each hour from 9:55 a.m. to 6:55 p.m. Listen all day for your chance to win Sports Bash Cash up to $10,000.